Ladies and gentlemen, please notice that exits are conveniently located.
What was that? Oh my God.
If you worked at it, you really could be attractive. I'm like, damn, man.
I think it was one of the first horror movies I put on our list, and just watching it again, I was just like, I made a mistake. And Jesse Eisenberg's name popped up. Jesse Eisenberg?
No. Who did you think played the brother?
Makes out with Jimmy for no reason. Jimmy didn't earn that kiss.
He did. Where we're going, you don't need us.
Here's the 4th annual Forgotten Horror. Boo.
Take it or leave it. Hi, I'm Mike Field.
I'm Mike Butler.
And you're now entering the house of the devil, the apartment of the damned, and the shanty town of lost souls. Welcome to the 4th annual Forgotten Horror. Each episode will discuss a film that was forgotten by audiences. Perhaps they were too busy running from the ghosts of murdered children. Maybe they were bitten by a strange creature and like to howl at the moon. Or maybe they're being terrorized by an ancient wooden fetish doll. We'll discuss what we love about the movie or perhaps don't love about it, but we'll always recommend you revisit it. If you're not getting sucked into an event horizon and ripping your skin from your face, we want to hear from you. We're on Instagram and Facebook. Find us, or we'll find you. Our podcast is available on all platforms for your listening displeasure.
Very well
How's that
done.
go for
Very
you?
well
Like
done.
that?
Very well done.
Thank you. So we are starting our Forgotten Horror season. People who listen to the show know that every October we basically cover some horror films for the 4 or 5 weeks, whatever that falls on that year. But we are starting off with a special guest today, who I've been trying to get on this podcast for a while. Basically, me telling Butler I wanted to get you on, John.
So, Butler was like, no.
No.
I know. He always hated me. It's fine.
I just kept saying, I really want to get John on the show. I want to get John and Spence on the show.
Yeah, that's
really
not the way you said it. Was like I was going, Pshaw, guess.
He was. I don't want John. But so we are joined by John Doolan, who is a co-host of the You Can't Sit With Us podcast. John, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody. Lights, camera, and me without a stitch of makeup on. Here we are.
Now, I listen to your show, John, but I know I try to tell people, hey, I listen to this podcast. You Can't Sit With Us. They have no idea what I'm talking about. Introduce your podcast real briefly, or however long you want to go.
So usually so You Can't Sit With Us is me and Spencer, and we basically do a lot of like cult films. We do a lot of queer cinema. We do a lot of horror. We basically do a lot of trash. So it's a lot of like, does this movie make me look gay kind of stuff, like real campy, very queer. And we haven't recorded. We actually did record pretty recently, and I lost the episode. So whoopsie, technology. Yeah, that was fun. But we're on a little hiatus because Spencer's on a shoot and I'm in the middle of writing 3 projects right now. But we will be coming back soon because I saw something called They/Them on Peacock that I need to discuss with Spencer.
Oh, I know. We talked real briefly about that. So I still want to see it, even though you gave me your review of it.
Oh, yeah. No, I recommend you see it.
Okay.
To see it for your own eyes, for sure. But yeah, we do anything that is kind of like we talk about movies that we love that most people can't stand. Like, we gushed over Batman and Robin for 2 hours one time. We talk about Showgirls all the time, Drop Dead Gorgeous, anything that has like a weird queer cult following.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone out there, I recommend you to listen to the podcast. I think it's very funny. I know you guys personally, so maybe that's also where I'm coming from.
That could be it. Yeah.
from people who don't know, John, Spencer, Mike, and myself all worked at a movie theater over here in Milford. Actually, John, I don't know if you know this, but none of us work there anymore. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I do know that. So I've been going a lot lately to watch movies, because I hadn't gone for a while. And like every time I go there, somebody that I know still works there. And like last time I went there the other night, and the ticket taker, she was like, "Oh, John, I miss you being here." And I said, "Girl, I don't miss this place at all." So.
Oh, yes, agreed. I couldn't it took me forever to realize I don't have to work on like Saturday night or something like that for the longest time. I know Butler just left, so he's still kind of in that gray phase of terrorized that he needs to keep going to work and stuff like that, right, Mike?
I did wake up what was it? What did I tell you? Tuesday, I woke up in like a cold sweat going, I'm late. I go, wait, no, I'm not.
All right, so enough about that. Let's get into the movie we're doing this week. Now, for people who don't know, when we have a guest on, I usually just send them a list of movies, or I don't know if I sent you the big list, John, but I know we were going to do Forgotten Horror with you. So it might have been an abbreviated list. And I basically say, pick whatever you want to do, or if you want to do a movie, we'll do it if it's not on the list. And what movie did you choose for us?
I chose from your list, and I chose Trilogy of Terror. I was actually going to choose a different one, but I thought Spencer was going to do this with me, but unfortunately he's on a shoot right now.
That son of a bitch.
I was originally going to choose Cursed because I have a lot to say about that one, but I knew Spencer would want to do Trilogy of Terror, and I also would have loved to done Trilogy of Terror as well. So that is the one I went with.
Excellent. Yes, I told Mike that I thought you would pick Cursed. I was like, he's going to go with Cursed. I know it.
See, I was pretty sure both John and Spencer would absolutely want Trilogy of Terror. And I was surprised.
This is a reckoning coming. It's like what, a year or two in the making since you guys did Burnt Offerings and just were like not high on it. And
I love Burnt Offerings. It's just got
somebody
issues.
has to come on here and give Dan Curtis's directing style some love, and Karen Black, goddess that she is, some love as well.
Excellent. That's what I like to hear. Awesome, Mike. So before I get into some of the facts, why don't you let everyone know what Trilogy of Terror is about real quickly?
Okay, real quickly. The same woman, Karen Black, appears in 3 tales as a blackmail teacher, a tormented lover, and opposite sisters. That's kind of weird.
That's it. That's
it.
The synopsis.
I told you it was a short synopsis. So because we're going to go, because it's 3 different like short vignettes, each one, I figure as we go through them, we'll kind of talk about them as we go, like what each one's about.
Yeah, that makes sense. So for those who don't know, Trilogy of Terror has a runtime of 72 minutes. It's unrated because this was actually an ABC movie of the week. I think it was on a Tuesday. Yes, Tuesday, March 4th, 1975. I wasn't even born yet. Amazing. And this film came out on 8:30 on a Tuesday night on ABC, which I wonder, I don't know how you guys feel sometimes about like these films that you watch now, and you wonder, like, I wonder what the reaction was when this was out, on the TV show. Somebody's flipping around because, TV back then is different than TV now, especially network TV. I'm just fascinated by like what would be the reaction of people that just flip it on, seeing like, oh, let's see what the movie of the week is, not knowing what they were going to get. What do you guys think?
Oh, yeah. I think people were absolutely gobsmacked by this thing when it aired in the 70s. And I'll get into why when we go into segment by segment. But it pushes a lot of boundaries as somebody who watches TV movies a lot from that era. This goes places that those others wouldn't dare, especially when you have standards and practices at play with the networks.
It's sometimes really difficult to tell people that, maybe who are haven't experienced these type of movies, who are younger and don't understand, like, when they're like, I've seen this stuff before. I was like, yeah, but you don't understand when this came out, nobody was doing this, or you know what I mean? It's really difficult to kind of get them to understand that. I know that in my head.
The final vignette with the Zuni warrior, that was like, I remember growing up, because the reason I watched it was because my mother always said it was like one of the scariest things she ever saw on TV was the last sketch. And for the longest time, I thought I had seen the other 2 vignettes, but I guess I had not. I'd only seen, and I had seen the third one like a bunch of times. I love the third vignette. But like John said,
to be fair, most people that see those other 2 kind of forget that they exist.
That's
anyway.
true.
So you might have seen them.
But John, you're right that it does push a lot of boundaries when you look at the other 2 vignettes as taking place in 1975. Because I was thinking the same thing, like, how was this allowed on ABC?
For sure, especially that first one.
Yep.
So let's get into it. Production company was ABC Circle Films and Dan Curtis Productions, distributed by Buena Vista International and Disney ABC Domestic Television. As we talked about, as John said, it was directed by Dan Curtis, who has done the TV show Dark Shadows, the TV movie The Night Strangler, and of course Burnt Offerings, a movie we did. I want to say, was that our first season, Butler, of Forgotten Horror?
I think it might have been the first season or second season of Forgotten Horror.
So stories 1 and 2, these are all based on Richard Matheson short stories or stories. And then the first 2, story 1 and story 2, which are Julia, right? Julie. I got that wrong already? Good job, Mike.
It's Julie.
Julie, and then Millicent and Therese. Those were written by William F. Nolan. who also wrote Burnt Offerings and Logan's Run. And the third one, which Butler was referring to, which is Amelia, which is basically about the warrior doll, was written by Richard Matheson because he thought that he had to write that because he needed to make sure that that was written correctly, I guess, which is an interesting note I saw. But I did not know he wrote Jaws 3D, John. I did not know that.
He sure enough did. Well, he's one of the multiple writers on that movie, aka Jurassic Park before Jurassic Park existed. Right. If you ask me, Michael Crichton has a lot of answers to give us.
He also wrote House of Usher and Twilight Zone, the movie. This was cinematographed by Paul Lohman, who did Nashville, High Anxiety, Mommy Dearest, and Kidco. I always say Kidco because I, for some reason, remember that movie. I don't know why growing up, but I just remember these kids selling manure. And I don't know why I remember that movie all the time. Composer was Bob Colbert, who's done the TV show The $100,000 Pyramid. He's done all those episodes, which is amazing. And the TV show Dark Shadows. Edited by Les Green, who did the TV show Mod Squad and Macmillan and Wife. And produced by Dan Curtis. I tried to find movies that he produced that he didn't direct. What I could find was The Picture of Dorian Gray from 1973 and The Night Stalker from 72. He primarily did TV movies. Is that accurate, John? Because you probably know Dan Curtis.
That's very accurate. I mean, Burnt Offerings was his big theatrical one, but he worked in TV a lot.
Yeah.
Even like throughout his later career, I mean, he even did like Trilogy of Terror too, which good luck finding.
We had that. Butler, I was telling John, I'm like, I was going to try to watch it just to kind of like complete it because, it's just, okay, let me watch it just so I can have that background. And I couldn't find it anywhere.
I hadn't tried yet, but the first, obviously I want to see the sequel Zuni Warrior one, but the first story sounded kind of cool as well when I was reading about it.
What was the first story?
I haven't seen it since I was 10, so I couldn't tell you what that movie's like. I'm sure it's terrible, but I loved it at the time.
The first story had a bunch of people trying to grave rob a woman's husband because he has all his money or his will in the grave, and there are giant rats in the tunnels underneath the graveyard, and they eat people.
Jeez. Wait a minute, I might have seen that. That sounds familiar.
It came out in 1996. You might have seen it and just forgot about it.
Maybe. All right. So as we know, as we already said, Karen Black is in this movie. She plays Julie. She plays all the leads in the shorts: Julie, Millicent, Therese, and Amelia. She was nominated for an Oscar for 5 Easy Pieces. She's also an easy writer. She's in the 1974 The Great Gatsby, the movie Nashville, which she won a Grammy for Nashville, I think. She wrote 2 songs in that movie and performed them. I want to say she won a Grammy. Maybe she was nominated. She's also in Family Plot, House of a Thousand Corpses, and of course, Burnt Offerings. John, what have I missed what Karen Black is in that you want to tell me?
How dare you?
Tell me what I missed.
Up the Tobe Hooper classic, Invaders from Mars.
There you go.
Also, she was in Gypsy 83, which is a super fucking weird. So, can I swear on this?
Yes. Of course you can. Yeah.
Okay. Super fucking weird kind of emo gay teen movie from 2001. So that's my sweet spot. And she played like an aging diva who like stalked around the room singing and like wearing like fur and everything. So high recommend on that.
Interesting. So I have the credits of everyone else and I'll take them story by story. So the first story, Julie, stars Chad, is played by Robert Burton, who is Karen Black's husband at the time of the production of the film, but not when the movie came out.
Correct.
Yeah. He's in the TV show Texas, the TV show Lassie, and then he quit and moved into commercial real estate. So I'm sure he's doing a good job right now. Jim Storm plays Eddie, which was his friend. He's in the soap opera, The Bold and the Beautiful, and the TV show The Doctors. And then Gregory Harrison plays that dude at the end, Arthur, who's clearly going to get entranced again. And he's from the TV show Trapper John, MD, for all them young people out there who have no idea what I'm talking about. In the second one, which was Millicent and Therese, you had John Carlin as Thomas. He's from Dark Shadows, and Cagney and Lacey, and then George Gaines, as the doctor, who everyone's going to know as the father from Punky Brewster. And in the Police Academy movies. I think that's the only 2 things people know him from. It's got to be. And then the last one, this is my note for the last one. I have Walker Edmiston as the Zuni fetish doll. So he's the voice of the doll that makes obviously the screaming voices, but he is the voice of Slugworth and Willy Wonka. He dubbed over the actor who plays Slugworth in Willy Wonka. And I was like, that's a weird note. I need to talk about that. All right. So let's take it movie by movie, and then I'll try to get in some facts. If we want, we can pepper in some facts as we go, which is completely fine. But let's definitely try to stay on just like short story by story so we can kind of focus on that. How do you want to kick off Julie? Actually, you know what? I got my first question about Julie, and maybe one of you guys know this if you can answer it. What exactly is Julie supposed to be?
Okay, I was gonna bring this up as well. I think you can have a couple different readings of it. I mean, obviously, there's just the straightforward reading where she is just like a serial killer human, you know. But then, you know, there's also like, is she like a succubus? Is she a siren? And there's also like, there's a lot of like, there's, you know, her last name is Eldritch, which is like, you know, the Eldritch horrors, which is the whole.
Oh, right. Yep.
That's like a. What the hell? Who's that awful author? Not awful,
Lovecraftian
like
kind of
Lovecraft.
thing.
Yeah, terrible human being, but not a bad author. Yeah, the Lovecraft Eldritch horror. So I was like, she must be like some kind of like mythical creature. And there's also like references to Jonathan Harker from Dracula. Like that's like the fake name he uses. So in my mind, she's some kind of like mythical siren luring in trash men to destroy them.
Well, she puts that image of herself into his head. I mean, that's what I assume.
Yeah, she even has him use the exact same words that she thought of because she didn't hear him from all that far away about wondering what's under all those clothes. She definitely put that in his head.
So not only is she somebody who clearly is of some kind of supernatural being, but she's also somebody who it gets off on being taken advantage of. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, that was so the politics of this one are a little complicated. At one point, you know, when you're watching it and it gets to the end, you're like, fuck yeah, you know, like good for it. You know, it's almost like a Jennifer's Body thing. I'll reference Jennifer's Body any chance I can get.
Okay, go for it.
Where she's like, you know, she's wronged by men. And so she's kind of taking revenge on it. So like, you know, when she kills him at the end, you're like, oh, fuck yeah. But then you're like, wait a second. Like she let that go on for a while. So was she getting off on it? Was it part of her game? Like did she like being, you know, gangbanged and everything? Because that's what we're alluded to at some point. I mean, she's, you know, so it's like, it's a very like mixed. And that's why I'm going with the fact that she's kind of like a mythical kind of demon woman, because it makes it a little more easy to swallow that like she can take it, you know, like without, I almost feel like the message we're supposed to learn from it is that she's seeking out these men that are already trash. And since she's kind of like an otherworldly being, I'm reading so much into this right now, by the way, but I'll go. Is that like, you know, she's taking these men out so they can't cause pain on any actual woman, you know, in the real world.
I almost think that also she could be somebody who is immortal, but it ages very slowly. So that maybe this kind of thing that she's into, this kind of, I was going to say kink, but this kink that she's into is something because she's also bored. And
that's what she alludes to a bunch of times. Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
She does. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's one of the things that we always talk about on the show is sometimes when we're left to kind of, like you say, read into it, John, you know, is that we don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, you know, like is that something that the writer just didn't think about, or are they just kind of like, you figure it out? You know, that's the whole fun of it. I don't know where you fall on that.
I don't think the writer didn't think about it. I think that it is kind of left open to your interpretation. I mean, like Richard Matheson is not like a willy-nilly kind of just throw something together writer. So he always kind of has a point. Like nothing is really accidental in his storytelling except for Jaws 3, but that's another beast entirely. But you know, a girl's got to eat, and I'm sure that was a great paycheck for him. But it's, you know, it is very like, you know, she does have that line where she says, you know, like, oh, you know, there was one who lasted almost 9 weeks because he was creative. So she does kind of like get off in a sense on this like torture that these men are putting her through. And I don't know if it's like maybe that, you know, the more they put her through, the more glee she gets out of murdering them at the end, you know, if more justified she feels. You can interpret it anyway, I feel like. And that's sometimes okay. And I feel like that morality in horror movies is always kind of up for interpretation, especially when you don't have like a clear good guy like that.
Well, I also think go ahead, Mike. Go ahead. Yeah.
I also think when you do short form horror films like this, and I think, Field, we talked about it, well, not on the microphone, maybe it was during an episode where we talk about the movie Us and how it doesn't explain anything. but you watch it for 2 hours, and how that's kind of frustrating. But it's okay when it's something like an Outer Limits episode or a Twilight Zone, when you have a limited amount of time. I mean, this is only an hour and 17 minutes, so you can't really go as far into in depth. So I think that kind of excuses you as a writer. Kind of, you can have those ideas in your head, but you kind of want the viewer to kind of pick that up and go as you go, because you have to tell a story a lot quicker.
I always view the horror genre as almost similar to how I view short films, where short films, you know, you have a lot of leeway to do whatever you want in a short film. You're not bound by the 3-act structure. You can create a 3-act structure in a short film, but you don't have to. And in horror films as a genre as a whole, I always think that you're given leeway to take those kind of chances, and you're given leeway to just do things that maybe don't make sense, but you just kind of want to leave it out there to see how people react to it. I think you can play a lot in the horror genre. John, I know you write in the horror genre more than anyone. So what do you think? Is that how you attack a horror script, do you think, or do you try to have a clear message?
So like, I always kind of try to have a clear message, but the thing is, you know, when you write something, it's going to get interpreted different by like everybody. So like, for example, you know, like one movie that I wrote, like Dead Souls, I had a clear image of what I was saying with that, and it's filtered through somebody else. And so they're having a different director is filtering that through his interpretation of it. And, you know, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that, you know, like it's like I'll call it the Nightmare on Elm Street 2 effect, where, you know, that obviously we all know that's like the gayest movie ever made, but the director had no idea. But like, you could still read all that in there. But like, if you choose to ignore it, you could ignore it too, because it was made by a straight director who had no idea that it was in there. You know, so it's like, it's really interesting. Like, of course you want to like have like a message in there, but I feel like it's still okay, especially in horror movies, for like the message that you're trying to get across. Even if it doesn't come across, if somebody's getting something out of it, period, if somebody is reading something in there that you didn't intend, that's still okay. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
as long as they're getting something.
Yeah. I think when you talk about Nightmare on Elm Street 2, I think about Commando. The movie Commando with Schwarzenegger. Yeah. And I love that first scene where he's just walking with the giant log and is entering the frame. I just like when I realized that, when I watched it when I was younger, you don't realize that, but later on, and when you realize, and that scene comes up, I just start laughing because I'm just like, oh, this is fantastic.
Absurd. Yeah.
I mean, and you got the guy at the end wearing like chains and leather, you know, looking for Schwarzenegger to stick the knife in. Yep. I'm like, yep.
Yeah, I mean, that happens. I mean, look at Top Gun, for Christ's sake. You know, like straight men love that movie, not realizing that it's like the gayest thing ever made, you know?
That's what makes it perfect.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what makes it rewatchable, because that first movie's not great, but like you can go back and read it in that lens and be like, oh no, this is interesting.
Absolutely. Of these 3 shorts, I found that this short, Julie, and I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I found that this short, I thought would make an interesting feature if they stretched it out in terms of like her past and what, you know, just kind of like how she talked about all these men that she was with. I thought that her character and this story, I was like, I could see this as a 90-minute movie. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Oh, I think for sure. And I think they kind of did make that there's one of the segments in VHS is very similar to this, and like the themes of it, I feel like. And they did spin that one off into a 90-minute movie. And also, like I mentioned, you know, you have Jennifer's Body. You have other movies that have like kind of this like otherworldly female that's getting revenge on people. And so those movies do exist. And this one I thought did have the most potential to be an elongated segment. I mean, there's a lot going on in there that we don't get to explore because it is only like 20 minutes long. But it's also pushing a lot of boundaries, you know? It's talking about rape. It's like, you know, murder. It's all this like blackmail, you know.
He roofies her drink. Shit.
Yeah. On like playing on prime time on ABC in the 70s. That's like bonkers in my mind.
The fact that their 2 large root beers are $1.
That was my first thought when he went to that concession stand. I go, oh my God.
And those are like larges, and I'm like, those are smalls right now.
Yep. Yes. I got a large the other day at the movie theater, and I didn't make it more than an hour into the movie before I had to run and take a piss.
I've been there. The one quote from this short that I was like, it was from her friend Anne, which is like, if you worked,
it's probably the same one I wrote down.
If you worked at it, you really could be attractive. I'm like, damn, Anne.
Thanks, Anne. Have fun.
And like, in what insane fucking She's All That world is Karen Black not gorgeous? Like, come on now.
and that's a testament to her in the show, because in the movie, because she's wearing very little makeup in terms of that when you first see her as the dowdy teacher, and even when she plays Millicent in the second one, which we'll get to, she's very like, she uglies it up, and some actresses wouldn't do that. They wouldn't go that route.
No, I mean, if you've seen House of a Thousand Corpses, you know that Karen Black gives zero fucks about uglying it up. That's for sure.
All right, so let's move on to story 2, Millicent and Therese. Butler, give me your initial thoughts about this one.
This was definitely, I thought, the weakest of the group, but might have been, the more I thought about it, the more it might have been all right back in the 70s. I knew right away that they were the same person, or not right away, but it didn't take me long to figure that out. And I think and I think one of you guys brought it up earlier, comes from, 30, 40 years of movies after this. It's just taking these kind of stories and running, that I saw the twist happening, but I also didn't think it was particularly scary or creepy. It just had a twist at the end. If that makes and then the twist just like happens, they say it, and then it just has a sudden cut. Almost like there might've been another few minutes of the short that they just cut out.
I don't know the history too much, but this theme of the one person, two personalities in one person, same thing, Butler. I don't know if this was one of the first ones to do this, but I think we have all seen this multiple times. Yeah. So I think that was, you know what I mean? Looking back on it after seeing all these stories, you're already expecting it. But back then, like you said, Mike, I'm wondering if this was one of the first times or first stories that really do that. John, I don't know if you know offhand if this was something that was brand spanking new for people to be exposed to, or that just kind of people, maybe they've seen this before.
I mean, it's Psycho, it's the it's the dual personality. It's the killer is actually the good person. It was a trope. It wasn't exactly a trope back then, but it would become a trope, especially in the 80s, I feel like. So I do think it would have been a little more shocking back then. I don't love this segment, but I think it's Karen Black firing on all fucking cylinders and just like camping it up and going full drag with it. So in that aspect, I appreciate it. But it's definitely the one where, like, if you were to make it today, her being the same, them being the same person wouldn't be the twist. You need a twist on top of that twist, you have to add another layer to it. It just kind of falls flat with a thud, because it's coming, especially with that god awful shake and go blonde wig that Therese is wearing, where you're like, well, of course that's not her hair, Right. They even have the line where she's like, oh, her blonde hair, in the brush, not brush that ugly ass wig.
I can't remember the movie where the twist was the other. The person had a creature living off whatchamacallit? Malignant. Remember when at the end of Malignant, when you find out the bag? Yes. Yeah. Like I almost expected that almost has to be the twist.
Well, that's also the Tales from the Crypt episode.
Right.
I feel like Malignant is like the super high camp, like just full on, modern day spin on this kind of twist, you have to go full crazy with it for it to be an effective thing, like Malignant.
And I had fun with
Malignant. Is insane. And I love every second of it.
It's almost in the Mike, you never saw it, right?
You told me to watch it, but by the time you told me to, it was gone. I couldn't find it.
It's so off the wall and just crazy, but it's like I told somebody like I was laughing, and he was like, "Oh, wait, it was stupid." I go, "No, I was laughing because I was enjoying it. I was having fun.
So much fun, yeah.
Right." But I almost think that it's in the wrong decade, John. It's like that's almost like a '90s film. You know what I mean? Where
for sure.
Yeah, no, I was.
And I mean, that movie was also taking from the '70s film The Manitou too, as well. So that that's another thing. But that it did play the same game that Millicent and Teresa's playing. You know.
Yeah, no, it's and I'm glad I remembered that now because I kind of want to watch that again.
It's worth another watch for sure.
Yeah, but you have to watch *Malignant*. I mean, it's really worth. It's like a good Saturday night film to watch. It's on.
Fun. I think it's on HBO Max.
There we go.
Did it get back on stream?
Yeah,
after they take it away after the other 35 movies.
Yeah, I'm about to say do it now.
Can't pay those residuals. Got to take it off.
Yeah.
So, do you want me to move on to the third story since Millicent and Teresa is not really one that we all love?
Yeah, I just want to give one more shout out to Karen Black's acting in this, because I do think she's playing such distinct different characters, and I think she's having a blast playing both of them. And this is another one where it's like, I don't know. It's like the first one where it kind of leaves it up to interpretation if there was a supernatural bent on it, because I mean and it's kind of sad too. She kills herself, like that's. It's easy to just like write it off as just kind of like nothing of a segment in the middle of the movie, but it is kind of sad. And all these movies have like a repressed woman as the lead character. And like, we see what happens to them once they're repressed, etc. And, you see Millicent, she kills herself, and that's kind of like super tragic. And you don't really think of it that way at the time because it's like, the shock, the twist reveal, etc. But, she kills herself with a voodoo doll. Like, did she actually do that, or did she kill herself some other way? We don't really know. That's left up to interpretation.
I like the voodoo doll book that she picks up, or the Voodoo and Spirits book written in like whiteout pen. All the other books have real binding.
Yeah.
I find that like the character Therese is so. I think there's pieces of all the characters like Julie, Millicent, and Amelia, who's in the third story, are all not. I don't want to say they're not all the same. But I'm saying that they have
very distinct, there's characteristics that are the same.
Bleed over, but the character of Therese is completely different from all three. Almost like Therese is in a different film, even from the guys that are in the movie. It's just a complete.
Well, also she doesn't actually exist. So
true.
That's why
this
she
is
does
true.
It. Yeah.
There you go. Perfect. All right, so let's go on to the third story, Amelia, and we're just going to talk about this doll. Where do you want to start with this one, guys? Because I mean, I could start anywhere. I mean, how she hates her mom.
The conversation she has with herself is awesome. I think that's one of the best displays of her acting talent right there. Is it's not easy to talk to yourself on the phone in a scene, and so many people do it, and you're just like, all right, I'm waiting for my next line. Mm-hmm. Her conversation is really well done with no one on the other line talking to her.
And that's
I'm glad you brought that up, because it's also an unbroken take too. So she was just going for minutes on minutes and minutes having a conversation with herself. And that, ma'am, is acting.
That's awesome.
She also rewrote that dialogue with the mother on the phone. Karen Black wrote that scene because she wanted to make the mother appear manipulative. So the audience would be at the end of the movie would be happy that she's about to kill her mother, basically. So she rewrote that dialogue. I don't know if you guys knew that.
I did read that.
Yeah, and it almost feels improv too, because I mean that in a good way, because it feels very realistic of not people see, they'll stammer a little bit, in real conversation, or they'll pause and she has those kind of weird awkwardness of how you really would have a conversation. So it really felt like she was improvising. It's giving me very Big Alice in the opening of Friday the 13th Part 2 vibes when she was on the phone with her mother, but obviously better acted and better shot. But.
Let me ask this question then, because...
Who made that gold chain, which is it's like the weakest gold chain in existence?
I'm laughing because because I know I brought it up before. I'm going to bring it up now. For those who don't know, I brought it up. There's a short film called Karen Black Like Me, and the story features a gay man who's being terrorized by a possessed sex doll, and the chain that he gets is like it's a cock ring, and it falls off.
If you didn't know that Karen Black was a gay icon before, you sure do now.
Yeah. I mean, I was just like, First of all, the toy that goes terrorizes him is huge. But anyways, I digress.
We don't kink shame around here.
Not at all.
ma'am.
Not at all. No, not here either. Listen, I listen to your podcast, John. I know.
Unless you're Victor Salva, and that's something. If you listen to the podcast, you'll hear us talk about.
Oh yeah. Does it hold? It's a doll. It's obviously somebody holding a doll. It's obviously like again, that's a short film that the Amelia is something that you could see, a couple of 20-somethings doing, just hanging out. Hey, let's do this thing with this doll. It's attacking people. Do you think it holds up? I know is it hold up for us because of nostalgia? Do you think if I show this to a 20-year-old, 22-year-old filmmaker that they're going to just laugh it off? Do you guys think that the third one, and especially the doll itself, holds up to I guess scrutiny? What do you guys think?
One of the things I like about this is, I watched this when I was in my mid-20s, I think, or maybe I was still in college, but I remember my mother saying, "Oh, it's the scariest thing." When I watched it, obviously I did not find it scary at all, but I didn't think it was funny. I thought it was well done. I enjoyed the work that was put into it. I enjoyed the effort. So I think if you watch this as just a casual film goer, you're going to just laugh your ass off. But I think if you're someone who likes film, is interested in film, you would watch it like you said, look at it like, I could make this. This is something I could do. I also enjoy that it's really one of the only ones that's actually, in its own kind of way, scary from start to finish. It doesn't have it's not all waiting for the twist. It's this thing is attacking her. It doesn't take long for that to happen. And the whole thing is just a whole chase scene in a single location. It's really you could do this as, if you could find a way to do the puppet well, a stage play. It's just really, really well done. The fact that she makes not quite as dumb decisions as some horror characters would make in the same situation, I think is really, really cool. I think they cleverly explain why she can't leave the apartment as easily as you normally would. I just think it's really, really well done. And I think that holds up while not being particularly scary maybe at the time anymore, but probably was back in 75.
You don't think that this movie, if you show this movie to a 13-year-old, they're going to get scared?
I think if you showed this to your son, he might.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's dead.
Yeah. I think for me, it's a lot of nostalgia too. And, it's watching it now. I still think it fires on all cylinders. It's so well done. But I can see more cynical audiences today, just kind of making fun of it a little bit because it is a puppet, and a lot of the times it is Karen Black, wrestling with an inanimate object, trying to make it look animate. And I think she doesn't like Bela Lugosi with an octopus. She actually does a good job of making it look like it is attacking her and it is a problem. And it's super influential. And I think that's the most important thing that I took away from it of this watch. There are shots literally that Child's Play recreated for a couple of the scenes, when the mom first discovers that Chucky is alive and it rolls under the couch. It's almost very similar shots to in this movie where, which is still, I think is still very kind of tense, where she's searching under the couch for the doll. And then the low, traveling, the POV shot is straight up Sam Raimi Evil Dead. So it was very influential on, you could give the movie a lot of shit for the way it looks because it is a low budget TV movie. But this segment in particular, I think is the first segment is what you can kind of unpack of what's going on in that. And this one is just the straight up horror one where I think you can dissect the actual filmmaking going into it and the innovations that they were doing. And it's just a lot of fun.
No, I was thinking of the moment I know they can't show the doll too much because you don't want to kind of reveal that it's a doll. You want to kind of keep it scary. But when the knife is in the doll's mouth as he's trying to climb and he's opening the door, I'm just oh, awesome.
There's I do think that it is, it is Dan Curtis. He did have a good sense of humor. If you've watched Dark Shadows, if you watch, Burnt Offerings, there are kind of darkly comedic moments and all those things. And, I always think of when the little knife is going underneath the bathroom door. It's like a cat trying to paw in underneath after you. I do think some of it is supposed to be a little camp and a little funny. But I still think it works as an effective, tense scene as well.
Mm-hmm. And when I say before about like, this is like a short film that, a student can do or a 20-year, like that's not a knock. That's like you said, Butler, like people watch this and they're like, oh man, I can do that. It should inspire people to be okay to take a chance like that with a doll. As long as you know how to frame and shoot and kind of tell your story, you could do it effectively. This vignette should show you that you can do that and do it well.
Absolutely. That's one of the things I always talk about with like Evil Dead. When people ask why I like Evil Dead, the first Evil Dead so much, is they just did it. They went for it. They were just a bunch of students and they innovated and they made it work. And I think with this one, I think they realize, the doll is, tiny. It's silly. So the doll is just brutal. The doll is straight up. He's not like clever. He's not waiting to set a trap. The doll just doesn't stop, which I think also adds to the tension and quickens the pace of this short even more, even though I think it's on par with the other two as well in terms of length.
I think it's actually even longer than the other ones. It just like flies by so much because there's so much going on. Yeah, I mean, like from the get-go.
That guy, he's like, and he doesn't stop for a second. He just keeps on going.
And the thing is, too, is like she's not stupid,
right?
Like there's like a couple times in like, whether it's like Leprechaun or, one of the Child's Play movies or something. You're like, well, it's just a little thing. Why can't you just grab it? And like she does that shit, like it just gets the one up on her every time. But she does everything that you should do if some little tiny creature is coming after you.
Yeah. She stabs it first. She tries to drown it, although obviously it's a toy. You can't drown it, but she puts it in the briefcase. She does everything right.
Yep, exactly. And then he throws it in. It's burned it alive,
And then what are we saying that happens to her at the end? The creature,
the soul gets into it. Like all that smoke is its soul.
Yeah. So when she burned the doll, the soul escaped out of it, and when she opened the oven, the soul possessed her.
Gotcha.
Is what I got out of it. Yeah. And obviously the teeth at the end is just kind of like, I don't think the Zuni warrior actually had teeth like that, that only the doll did. But that's what, it's what you do in a horror movie.
I think that was her idea too.
Yeah, her idea was that whole part.
Yeah.
And that's a good shot too. That's a really nice, creepy shot when she's sitting there banging the knife.
That's another very Evil Dead shot, because that's like straight up what Linda looks like when she first gets possessed in the first Evil Dead.
Oh yeah,
movie,
absolutely.
When she's like rocking back and forth in the hallway. So like I said, this one especially is worth a watch for how influential it really was on like movies of the 80s and 90s.
I'm curious because I didn't ask this before and I usually do. When did you first see this film, John? I always ask.
I was young.
Okay. Now, was this the movie that was influential in terms of like your writing and wanting to tell stories?
Not entirely. So the movie that was most influential for me was because I grew up watching horror movies. Mm-hmm. And then, so Scream came out when I was 12.
You're making me feel old.
Myself. I was 12. Yeah. And so that was the first time I saw a movie when I was like very conscious that somebody wrote that, because like, I was like, oh, they're referencing everything that I watch. And then, so from 12 on is when I became like just a little more than a casual horror watcher to seeking everything out. And this was one of the ones that I saw out because I saw it was on VHS at the video store right next to the sequel, like the next year or something like that.
Oh, remember Blockbuster? Tommy Kid.
Yeah, I do. I could smell it right now.
Was this your first film realizing Karen Black, or was this just kind of like?
Yeah, no, this was my first Karen Black film for sure. And then I went back to like see like her other filmography. That's when I discovered like Invaders from Mars, and some of her like earlier work too. Obviously Nashville's a classic, but it's not typically like a movie I would go to.
Right.
But I can't deny that it's great. And then she would just pop up in, like I said, that Gypsy 83 movie. I'd see her like in little pieces here and there. And then obviously Rob Zombie brought her back into like the mainstream with House of a Thousand Corpses and kind of gave her a little career resurgence before she passed away.
Mike, same question. When did you first, because you're the one that suggested this film.
Well, this was something my mom had always talked about. Like it was the scariest thing. The toy was alive. She always talked about like that third thing. But I never watched it. When I was younger, I liked horror. I watched a lot of horrors, but not if there was a living toy. For some reason, that always scared the crap out of me. Like I just hated living toys. You didn't watch
Chucky?
I watched some of Chucky. But I had the My Buddy dolls, which are what Chucky was based on. So I had to throw that in my closet, and they would air those commercials while I was watching cartoons during the day. And it just scared the crap out of me. So I never watched it. And then I watched Burnt Offerings in college. I took a horror movie class where we studied horror movies. I loved Burnt Offerings. I thought it was great. Although, as we talked about, it has issues. But I still love
I don't know what you're talking about with issues.
Listen, I put it on the list for that Forgotten Horror. I really enjoy Burnt Offerings.
You guys did not speak enough about how fucking terrifying that chauffeur was.
He is really bad. But yeah, I remember like Karen Black was really good in it. And I told my mom about how I saw Burnt Offerings, and she was like, she was in that, that Trilogy of Terror, the living evil African doll thing. So then I went and I found, I guess I just saw that clip. It must have been on YouTube or something, just that one short, or I watched all three and just don't remember them. So I watched it in college, and I've watched it a few times, just that last segment a bunch of times since then. But I always really enjoy it for that kind of campiness. But how just well done it is and how it just goes is just such a great horror short.
Were you scared of the clown in Poltergeist as well?
The clown actually in Poltergeist. I used to watch Poltergeist all the time when I was little.
Yeah, we're kind of geared. I think I'm going to show my middle child Penelope Poltergeist in October. She's into horror films, and she was all into Stranger Things. So I think I'm going to see if I can scare her.
Oh yeah, Poltergeist might be a good
one.
Yeah, we'll work our way up to scaring her. But yeah, she's already like pressuring me to watch like rated R films. I'm like, okay, calm down. Did you see this quote from Karen Black, John or Mike, when she talked about this film? When she says, "I think this this little movie took my life and put it on a path that it didn't even belong in." Do you think that she regrets that path? I'm not. I don't really.
I don't think she regrets it. I think So what I take from that is, because I don't think she regrets it, just because she did work with Dan Curtis again, because Burnt Offerings is after this movie. Mm-hmm. So like, I don't think she had any ill will towards it. It is, it did put her on a completely different path. It is. Even though like she got rave reviews for it, it is like, some people will consider it like a schlocky kind of B movie. And that was kind of what her career became. But like she would pop up in like other stuff here and there and just be like unreal in it. So it, like when she says that it changed her career, I think it did, but I don't think that's a bad thing, because she worked so consistently until she died, so if anything, it maybe like elongated her career. Whereas like if she was just the leading lady, because I mean, she worked with Hitchcock after this, but if she was just like the leading lady, of like a serious movie, maybe her star would have burnt out much earlier.
There's a lot more flexibility given to actors and actresses now than there was back then. You know what I mean? Like they're able to do a horror film, to do a schlocky film, to do a drama, they're able to bounce around. Obviously, if people recognize that they've got the ability, but also it's all about their brand. It's all about their personal brand now. And if they're popular, they'll bring butts in the seats. They're gonna put them in stuff. And it's too bad, because you have a lot of actors that from 30, 40, 50 years ago that probably would have been, I don't want to say more successful, but more well-known by giving that flexibility. You know what I mean? So, it is what it is, but there's definitely more flexibility given now to actors. Now, what I like to do, John, is I like to tick off Mike to give him critic reviews. And I know you like this film, so I'm going to give you this critic review. So I'm going to tick you off. So here we go. Felix Vasquez from cinemacraze.com felt that the first two segments were forgettable and stated that only the last segment was truly entertaining and creepy. Concluding his review, he wrote, "Trilogy of Terror was an all-around disappointing film with a steady focus on psychological torment and less on actual terror or scares. I wish I could join along with the crowd and praise this film, but I would have to be entertained to do so." Your thoughts?
I mean, I understand where he's coming from. That is, I don't see how you can just write off that first segment, though. Because of everything that we talked about, because of the gender politics that are going on in it. Like, there's a lot to dissect there. So when I hear something like that, I'm like, oh, you just didn't fucking pay attention to it. So, or you just had your like brain turned off, thinking you were just going to watch some like schlocky, like crap movie without even like understanding, the time period of which it was released and how like, that was like pushing so many boundaries at the time, to have that kind of subject matter in there and to just like ignore like Karen Black's performance in both of those other two segments is just criminal in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think when critics go into films with expectations, that's a recipe for disaster because they're not, the stories aren't being told the way you want them to be told. You need to experience it, obviously, the way the story is meant to be experienced. And I wonder if I don't think I'd ever could be a critic, but if I was, I don't think I'd watch trailers. I think I would just give me this synopsis and I'm going to walk in and I want to see what you got. I mean, I just think that when you start writing critiques and you're saying like, it should have been this and it should have been that. It's like, that's a terrible critique. That's not helping anybody. That's just what you want.
I was about to say, you can't judge a movie based on what you want it to be. You really have to judge it based on what it is. Right. And, you have to take this as a TV horror movie that aired on primetime and ABC in the 70s and like be like, okay, so what am I looking at from that perspective of it?
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Butler?
I think, again, it does undermine the first one, which has a nice twist, has a nice story plot. The second one, I'm not going to knock him for that. But you also got to think about the name of the film is Trilogy of Terror. And he is right that the last one is really the only real terrifying tale.
It's a terror that's more visceral and more,
Well, I think that's what people
immediate.
expect from the word terror. Well, terror is a more visceral word. But again, like you said, you can't just walk in with expectations. But I don't disagree, but I do think it undermines the first story, which is really well done and really interesting, especially for back then.
But even the second story, and we all said that even though the second story isn't our favorite, it's not. It's more about because we have seen so many films that have been like that. You know what I mean? We've seen that plot line already. So I think we're unfortunately like we've already expect that twist. So it's really difficult to be surprised by the second film. It's really difficult to put ourselves in that position back in 1975, watching it. And being shocked and amazed because I wonder if we would have I wonder Butler, if your mother, if she I probably not, but if she remembers her feeling after watching the second one, was she surprised? Was she, you know what I mean? Because I'm curious. She doesn't know. We don't need to get her on the phone right now, but I'm just.
She'll listen to this episode and you'll see Facebook comments on the wall. So
you answer those Facebook comments.
I would highly doubt she really remembers the first two stories.
Okay.
I think it really is like that last story is what's going to stick with you if you watched it.
And it's crazy that I hear that a lot, too, that people don't remember those first two stories, especially the first one, because I feel like even the end when she's poisoning him she has that amazing line where he said, "You poisoned me." And she said, "No, I killed you."
I like that
line, which is just fucking so good. But like the guttural sounds that he's making as he's like choking on his own, like just whatever's going on. Yep. Is just like, that's like very visceral to me. And I kind of had like a reaction to it of like, oh, this is difficult to watch.
On an ABC movie, but.
Yeah. It's like, it's just like, so it's not violent, but it is very kind of like in your face and it is disturbing.
Yeah. Do you think, because we always talk about why we think these movies are forgotten. I mean, we can go through that, but before we do that, I wanted to ask, do you think that you would show this to anybody, or do you think that this is the type of film you would show to people who like horror films, who you think that you don't want to show this to somebody like a casual horror fan and they just be like, they just crap on it. You want somebody who would like that. What do you think? You think that's accurate?
Absolutely. I would never show this to just a casual horror fan because they would laugh it off the screen.
Yeah.
They just wouldn't. I just don't think they'd appreciate it from where it came from, how influential it was, what it did for the time. I don't think they'd appreciate the fact that we got an entire movie of like 4 different amazing Karen Black performances, and I can never hate a movie for that. Like it's just like it won't hold up to today's scrutiny if you have somebody who's like, oh yeah, my favorite movie is The Conjuring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is the type of movie that you would want to show, like, I don't know, at an art house film, and then have a Q&A after with somebody just to talk about it. This is like the perfect type of film for that. Butler, why do you think it's forgotten?
I I think that the third one is the most recognizable, which going back to your thing, I think the third one is one you could show to at least the casual horror fan as long as they like horror. I think even if they just get the campiness out of it, I think they'll still enjoy it. But I think the other two, it's tough because there's so much of the stories now are cliched at this point. Even the Amelia, it's as fun and as much as I love it. You've seen like Child's Play has done it, Evil Dead has done it. There are a lot of things that have done this kind of storyline. And I think if you go back and you go, hey, watch this, it's the first one that did it. Today's jaded audience is still going to be like, I don't care. But if you really like the movie, if you really like film, you can go and watch that first one and be like, how was this appropriate for TV in 1975? Because it clearly wasn't. And the third one is even the third one with the toy. There's a lot of blood in it, which I was surprised about the amount of blood, because I know there were quite a few rules and regulations, at least in terms of film, on how you can show blood, how blood was supposed to be filmed, and that maybe it came out later, that rule, and then stopped after that.
No, they were pretty stingent back in this era too about how much blood you can display on screen.
Yeah, so I mean, there was a lot of blood in that third one.
Yeah, there was.
I think that falls on deaf ears to people nowadays if you try to show somebody, and I don't think making that second one, which is apparently not well received at all, even the third, the Zuni Warrior Returns kind of thing, I think that may have killed its legacy or hurt its legacy a little bit, which is why you don't see a Trilogy of Terror 3 or anything like that.
Not yet.
Listen, if I saw that little guy for sale at like a Comic-Con, I would buy that statue right away.
Oh, you think they don't have that for sale at Comic-Con?
I haven't seen him yet, but I would absolutely buy him.
I don't think they've ever been officially licensed, but I'm sure you'll find some homemade Etsy.
Oh yeah, I'm sure I could Etsy that guy.
Yeah. I think to your point, Butler, and guys, I don't know see if I'm wrong with this, but I think 80s horror is probably the cynical person now, the cynical young filmmaker, movie aficionado, probably can connect with 80s horror a little bit easier than maybe 70s horror, because 70s horror is, which I love, is a different breed. It's a different animal. 80s is very much, slasher, very,
in your face.
Girls get chased by a guy in mask and, murders happen. They save the day. But 70s, like, you really got to think in 70s horror. So I think maybe it's unfortunate, but maybe some people can't relate to the horror from the 70s because of that. What do you think of that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, like 70s is always been a little more headier. It's been more about like mood and atmosphere, where the 80s was definitely more in your face with like a few exceptions here and there. But even those exceptions, when you look at like a moody one, like Ghost Story or The Changeling, stuff like that, they were still pretty graphic and in your face, So it's definitely like, the horror nerds today, the 80s, the 80s, the 80s. But the 70s is kind of like where the building blocks of that stuff came. And I think, true horror fans know that, but it is hard to get anybody to be just like, oh, just sit down and watch this 70s horror movie and have them not be bored by it.
John, where do you think? Now I'm just going to start asking questions about modern horror. John, where do you think we are in modern horror films? Like, where do you, because for a while it was creepy ghost story stuff. It was, just kind of like, like Insidious and even The Conjuring a little bit, Sinister. It was like this like dark presence that's in the area that you can't escape from, that you're inevitably going to get kept. Now, where do you think we are now?
Right now, you're seeing a couple different things. You're seeing the more, I hate this term, and I'm only using it because you'll know what I mean when I say it, elevated horror. Mm-hmm. You're going to see a lot of that. You're going to like, so there are like the more like thinky horror movies, but it's the 90s slasher is really making a return, I feel like. Whether that's a good thing or bad thing is up to your taste on that. We are getting a lot of slasher movies. The new Pretty Little Liar show on HBO Max is legit a slasher show.
Really?
It's not. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. It still has a lot of the teen melodrama of that original series, but it has a slasher in it in addition to that stuff. You had one of the better movies of this year. You had X, which was, even though it was a 70s movie, it is a slasher film.
I saw that. Yep.
70s set. Yeah. You had, the new Scream come out. I Know What You Did Last Summer had that TV show. Like, you are seeing a slasher resurgence. My most hated one is the new Halloween trilogy. That they're doing, but
Evil Dies Tonight.
Evil Dies Tonight, and that's something for another discussion. But I do think you're going to see a lot of 90s inspired because, for a long time we had a lot of 80s inspired. And now the kids that grew up on the 90s horror are starting to become adults and like make their own films. And so you're going to see a lot more of that. I feel like you're going to see a resurgence of like that slick, glossy look that the 90s were known for. Mm-hmm. And I'm totally fine with that. I mean, even like Bodies, which it's more of a murder mystery, but I guess you can call it like a modern day slasher if you really dissected like the structure of it and everything. That is like, a bunch of that. It's a little more nihilistic than a 90s slasher, but it has like those kind of elements to it where you're going to see more youth targeted stuff, I feel like.
I don't know. I mean, I saw X, like I said, and some of what's that movie that just the Reservation? Is that the one where they go to the dinner party? And they kill did you see the trailer for that?
The Invitation?
The Invitation.
Invitation. That's it. Not the Reservation.
Yeah, that's a vampire movie.
Is it? Interesting. All right. Yeah.
But that would fall under, I feel like that's going to be like an elevated horror, quote unquote, kind of. Even though it looks more like Ready or Not to me.
Yeah. Totally. Or what's the one that takes place in Australia, where they're in the house and they're terrorized, and when she runs out, she tries to run out of the front door, and there's that wire that slices her head off. What's the name of that one?
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
You're next.
Yep.
You're next.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was Australia?
Wasn't it? It was a foreign film, wasn't it?
No, she was Adam Wingard made that. She was Australian.
There you go. Yeah, I don't know my horror. I just know like I know of them, and I'm like, I want to watch that. Before we go, I want to ask you this, John. Do you think that the advent of digital blood and CGI is a good or bad thing for horror films?
It doesn't work for me, and it never worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
And the sad thing is like it doesn't work for us because we grew up on real practical effects.
Mm-hmm.
But kids who did not grow up on real practical effects, who grew up on the CG stuff, they don't see it as a problem because it's all they've known.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I'm fine with it being like some enhancements. Like I know that they digitally enhanced the practical costume in Prey for the Predator.
Mm-hmm.
And it looked fucking great, so I feel like there is that good marriage
Mm-hmm.
there. But if it's like, if all your blood is just CG splats on the wall, etc., I'm not into that.
Right.
Like I can't buy into that.
It's very hard to get really just get affected by it when it's not real, and just you know what I mean. Like I'm not saying like we all need to be squirming in our seats, but you do need to be affected by someone getting murdered.
Yeah, and I do understand why they I have been on sets where we use real blood and movies where we it's just the effect isn't working and it's taking up time, and you don't have time to change the actor out of the clothes, so you just have to do it digitally. I get why they do it digitally. It just it disappoints me every time.
Awesome. All right, Butler, where can they find us?
You can find us at ForgottenCinemaPodcast.com or ForgottenEntertainment.com, as we are part of the Forgotten Entertainment franchise or
franchise.
I don't know. I always say something weird at the end. We are part of Forgotten Entertainment. While you're there, check out all the other great podcasts and videos Forgotten Entertainment has for you on that website. You can also find us wherever podcasts are available and on social media. Check us out on Facebook's The Lobby, where my mom's going to talk about how scared she was of this third story, I'm sure, and annoy Field to no end with questions that I won't answer because I don't respond.
No, she doesn't annoy me. The fact that you don't reply to your mother annoys me.
I know.
Awesome. John, thank you so much for being on the show. Do you want to do a quick plug for your show again, or no? Do you always want to get out of here?
Sure. I mean, yeah, sure. You could search it. It's You Can't Sit With Us. Somebody has stolen our name.
Right. I saw that. They said that to you.
It's a group of fucking straight white women. So fuck them. They're fucking co-opting gay culture forever.
Bastards.
But you can find us on any place that you can stream your podcast: Apple iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, etc. You'll see more. Because Spencer moved out of state,
Did he really?
So he's down in Georgia right now.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I don't know if it's forever, but it's for the moment. So that's why we lost our recording, because we had to do it remotely, and I fucked it up because it was our first time doing it. So we're going to figure all that out so we could start having more consistent episodes. But other than that, go watch my movies.
Yes. Yeah, it's right. I didn't even mention, we mentioned your screenwriter, but like, yeah, what do you got coming out that's available to watch?
So you can go watch my Stalker's Prey trilogy, which is Lifetime movies, and they have a shark in them. The first one's called Stalker's Prey. The second one's called A Predator's Obsession. Don't ask me why it's not called Stalker's Prey. And the third one is called A Predator Returns. Do not ask me why it's not called Stalker's Prey.
You just write them, John. You don't title
them. Yeah. And I have a horror movie coming out hopefully later this year called The Ouija Witch, which is very similar to the first segment we talked about, like a revenge, woman scorned type thing. That was a one where I was given a 1 sentence like plot and kind of told to go apeshit with it.
Nice.
And so I just like did my thing.
Very nice. Very nice.
I have another Lifetime one coming out later this year. It's currently called Stealing in Suburbia, but it'll be something different when it actually airs. So I don't know. The Stealing Pact, the Circle of Lies. I don't know, whatever the hell Lifetime names for shit these days,
That's fantastic. Everyone, go listen to John Spencer's podcast. You Can't Sit With Us. It's very good, very informative. I just love hearing him talk about films and everything else they get up to. So I
hope
cool.
You're not offended by the F slur, because we say it a lot.
Man, it's all you. Go for it. It does. Please, you know me. I don't care. Doesn't bother me.
I'm saying any of your listeners that go to listen.
If you're soft, don't listen to this show.
If you're a fucking pussy who can't take, I'm kidding.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, John. Thank you very much. This is fun. And join us next week as Forgotten Horror rolls on with the 2005 Wes Craven film Cursed. That's right. It's about werewolves. Oh, boy. So we'll be watching that next week and talking and having so much fun. Until then, I'm Mike Field.
I'm Mike Butler.
And this has been Forgotten Cinema.
No. Forgotten Horror.
Correct.